What's going on, football fans? It's me, J.R. Clark, back again with another rendition of Pound for Pound. This time, I got my man Toby with me, and we're doing like, I guess you call it a collaborative or whatever. I had been researching on my own for, I don't know, a few weeks now about this defense, about like what Dean Pease brings to the table, his experience from Baltimore and New England. And come to find out, you were kind of doing the same thing. Like we hadn't communicated it, but we were talking pre-show one day, and last week maybe, and you had brought up studying how Dean Pease was attacking certain formations. And, we got to talking, and I was like, holy crap, I've been, researching the mess out of this. I even think I tweeted out the other day that I was starting to feel like a understudy to a Tennessee Titans defensive coordinator. As much film as I was watching of them. But that's what we do, right? We try to figure this stuff out. We try to not predict, but try to get an idea or a forecast of what this team is going to look like, under this new regime. So I guess in a way, why don't you go ahead and like start into some of the things that you were noticing with Dean Pease?
Part of me was still looking, even though I wasn't looking because I was kind of focused on the offense. And all of a sudden, it just hit me. And then I started seeing things line up. I mean, Dean Pease definitely is what Arthur Smith has shown to be as advertised. These guys are very adaptable, keeping an eye out on what's going on out there in the football world. And if they can incorporate it, they definitely have shown that they can do that. And I guess it just so happened that I came up on Creeper's defense. And I had, to be honest with you, I had never even thought about that. I've seen a few teams do it, but I didn't know that's what it was called, Creeper or simulated pressures.
Yeah, and that was as soon as you brought that up, you brought up creepers and simulated pressure to me, and then later on you sent me an article on it and you sent me some information, and I was like, okay, so that is what I'm looking at. Like, because one of the things that I was looking at was, I was really focusing on what he did in 2019 or 2018 and 2019 in Tennessee. And yes, I know he had been, in New England, he had been in Baltimore, but I was really intrigued by his stint in Tennessee, because in Tennessee he didn't have necessarily a Terrell Suggs and an Elvis Dumerville and an Eric Waddle and those guys. He didn't necessarily have like bona fide like stars. And so with that being said, I wanted to look at what did Dean Pease do with what I considered like average talent, right? Average NFL talent. That's a broad term, but average talent. Like, in New Orleans, Kenny Vaccaro was considered a liability. In Tennessee, he was an asset. Like, and then also you take into account like how much money did Dean Pease make Logan Ryan?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like with the things that he was able to do with him. And so I started looking at that and started to look to see how that could apply here. And then you add forth, you add to it some of the like quotes that we were hearing out of Dean Pease, whether it be the one of the interviews he had on, I think it was 92.9 The Game, when he was talking about, when we got to Tennessee, everybody was saying we didn't have a pass rush. And we ended up with some of the best pressures in the league. And so that intrigued me, right? Because we don't have a established pass rush here as of right now. Like you got Dante Fowler and Grady Jarrett, and that's pretty much about it. So really got to looking into how is he going to do that? How is he going to manufacture that pressure?
Right.
And the things I got to notice now, I'm going to hit you with a whole bunch of retarded stats, right? Because that's what I
Let's do
do.
it.
You know what I'm saying? That's what I do.
Let's do it.
Because
Let's do it.
numbers don't tell all the story, but they can help paint a picture, right?
Yeah.
So in his time in Baltimore, he didn't have less than, like, he averaged a 6.5 sack percentage. And what that means is a sack percentage is the amount of sacks per, like, amount of times per dropbacks. So
Okay.
about about 6% of the total dropbacks that they faced, they were able to convert a sack. So that was consistency is what I liked, what I saw there.
Right.
Now fast forward to the Tennessee days, because initially I was looking at, does Dean Pease blitz more than everybody else? Is that how he is supplementing, not having bona fide edge rushers or bona fide rushers, right?
Right.
So in 2018, they were a 29.8% blitz percentage. So almost 30% of the time their defense blitzed. They had a 24.5% pressure rate. Now, a pressure rate is a combination of QB hits, QB hurries, or QB
Yeah.
hurries, QB knockdowns, and sacks. So, almost 20, a quarter of the percent, 25% of the time, they, on the quarter of the dropbacks, they were getting pressure. So that's a pretty good rate. That's a pretty,
Yeah.
to the tune of 39 sacks. Everybody likes sacks. Sacks is not the end all be all, but it's an easy stat for us to look at.
Yeah.
In 2019, same consistency, as in a 24% pressure rate. Not a pressure, a 24% blitz rate with a 21% pressure rate to the tune of 43 sacks. So they upped the sack numbers a little bit. But grand total in 2019, 179 blitzes, and in that was 2018. 2019 is 166 blitzes. So, needless to say, like, a quarter of the time, Dean Pease is blitzing, and so that's probably going to be a little, an uptick from what we're used to with Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn
Right.
wasn't blitzing nobody. Like, he wanted to get to the quarterback with his front four, and that's something we're going to get to here in just a minute. And
Yeah, Doc.
I want you to expound on. I'm doing a lot of talking now, but I'm laying the
No,
groundwork, right? I'm
lay
laying.
it, hey, lay it.
Now, in 2019, the blitz rates were as follows: 3 people or fewer. This is where initially, when I wrote all these stats down, it didn't make sense how 3 people could be considered a blitz initially, but that's where this creeper stuff comes in.
Yep.
So 3 or fewer was 19% of the time, and of that 19% of the time, it was a 24% pressure rate. So when he sent 3 or fewer, he got 24% pressure rate. Now, 4-man rush. Now keep this in mind, because a 4-man rush which is what defensive coordinators will tell you they want to get home with 4, right?
Right.
Okay,
Right.
so 4-man rush, 65% of the time. So if he was blitzing, it was with 4, and this is where that creeper stuff comes in. It was 25% pressure rate on a 4-man rush. 5-man rush, 13% of the time. Now, when I was going through this, again, I didn't understand. And I'm going to let you explain this stuff, because I didn't understand why the 5-man rush, which is what I think of when I think of a blitz.
Right.
Initially, when I thought of a blitz, it's sending more than it can be blocked. So 5 guys, right? That's more than your 4-man rush. He only did that 13% of the time. So that doesn't equate to the 160 some odd blitzes. You see what I'm saying? And that's what that was confusing me. Now, a 6-man or 6 plus, 6 or 7-man, was 16% of the time, and both of those were well over 35% pressure rates. So obviously you send more guys, you get more pressure rate. But now I want you to explain in this creeper deal why that 4-man rush is still considered a blitz.
So I mean, I love it, man. When I first discovered it and came up on that, and you know, and once again, you see college influencing the NFL. And I don't think there is a lot of teams still yet that are actually doing this. But what it does is it still allows you, when you running these creepers, to get a 4-man rush without giving up the integrity of the pass coverage. And
Right.
so you have a chance to improve your pass rush and getting pressure on the quarterback and dropping 7 in the coverage at the same time by essentially replacing the first level. And for anyone that don't know what the first level is, just anyone on the D line up
Mm-hmm.
front with a second or third level player. What you see in these diagrams here, you got the safety actually, no, not the safety, but the nickel corner actually going in to add with the 4-man pressure. As you're dropping guys out, the linebackers you're dropping out on one of the diagrams, but you're still getting pressure with the fourth guy, which is your nickel. And if you look at the other diagram, you got the 2 front guys in the middle, the tackles who are dropping out of there. Uh, is that right? Yeah.
Now, in the simulated pressure, and we'll get to that here in a second.
Yeah.
But in the simulated pressure diagram, you have the two, the Mike and the Will linebacker,
I can
have
see that.
walked up on the line to
Mm-hmm.
give the illusion that they're coming on an
Yeah.
all-out blitz.
Yeah.
And what happens in that simulated pressure is when the ball snapped, they dump back to the
Yep.
shallow parts of the field, the hook routes, and then you get the end here drops to cover the curl flats, the curl route and the flat route, and then you
Yep.
have your 3 linemen, which is a tackle, the nose, and in this F position that would be another like an edge guy, and then you have your nickel backer or money backer, bullet backer, whatever you want to call him, rushing. And this position right here is what really caught my attention
Right.
because in Tennessee Titans, I'm gonna pull this up here in 20 2018 and 2019. Logan Ryan had had a total of 8.5 sacks in 2 years. Logan
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, the cornerback, nickelback Logan Ryan. This position right here, this money backer, had with Dean Pease 4.5 sacks. Now, what drew me to that is like I think if there is a role on this team for Isaiah Oliver, I think it's going to be that money role.
Yeah.
That bullet backer. But I also could see somebody like a Jalen Hawkins playing that role. Like if he wants to get real fancy with it, you put Foye and Michael Walker in the middle and drop Dion over here.
Yeah.
So what I'm really feeling like is that our linebackers and safeties or nickelback like the back 7 in this creeper defense could actually come in and be a strong suit
Right.
for this team. I want to show these other 2 diagrams that we have here, and it's just showing again where one of the defensive linemen drops out and is replaced by somebody rushing from a different platform. You
Right.
see it either from the money backer rushing or one
Yeah.
of the linebackers rushing. And,
Yep.
and we've already got that confirmation from Pease. Pease has already said that. He's already said that we're going to be, rushing and launching from a bunch of different angles. Everybody's rushing.
Right. Right. And
Like,
see, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I mean, see what I and see what I like about them simulated pressures, which is a little different from the creepers, is see simulated pressures like what you just showed with the wheel and the mic, how they come up to the line,
Oh,
making
yep,
it look
yep.
like they're gonna rush. but in all actuality, they're actually dropping out. But you still, being able to get um, four guys to the quarterback. But see, the difference in that between the creepers and the simulated pressures is creepers is really where you're showing less movement, where you're not really giving up a lot to the quarterback and what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But before he knows it, you're just rushing off from that spot with full speed. And that's why it helps to have guys with good, 150 to 170 10-yard splits, because you got a lot of guys with some great 10-yard splits that can rush that quarterback. I mean, if Kendall Sheffield can make it, man, the speed that he brings to the team, he can definitely be a guy that can get after it when it comes to the quarterback. AJ Terrell could eat because he did a lot of this stuff at Clemson.
Well,
Um,
and that's the thing that with Dean Pease and this defense has me super excited because what they've done, like the only true like speed rusher, edge rusher, whatever you want to call it, on the roster right now is Dante Fowler. Like you can throw Barkevius Mingo in there, Steven Means, but those are rotational guys. You know,
right.
those are essentially backups, right? But so your true starter in that instance is, Dante Fowler, and that doesn't like bolster you with a ton of confidence. Now, don't get me
Right.
wrong, I think Dante Fowler is going to get back closer to what he was in LA, as far as having, that 10 sack season. I think he was hampered a lot by injuries and by weird off seasons, and then his coach getting fired and all this other jazz. But now he's redone his deal, put a lot of incentives behind his sack production, so that's going to give him even extra motivation.
Right.
So I think that Dante Fowler can come in and do some work, but I think honestly the hits and the QB pressures are going to come from the linebackers or the defensive backs.
Right. Yeah. See what I like, and see the other thing about it may look like a blitz, but you're still being able to get them forward. And see, the thing is, you're attacking the protections of the offensive line, whatever their rules is up front, because as 4 to 5 or 6 guys rushing, sometimes, man, if them things get blocked up, man, you leave so much vulnerability in your coverage because you don't have nobody else to really cover in there. You leave holes. But see, when you running these creepers and simulated pressures, man, you don't leave them type of holes in there. If
Right.
somebody is not at their spot in this type of defense, then there's a problem. They don't need to be on the Falcons anymore. Um, but man, I mean, I love it because, like you said, a 13% blitz rate when you blitzing 5 to 6 guys, now it becomes more effective when you're mixing in stuff like these
Right.
creepers simulated pressure. So you don't really know if they're going to send 5 or 6, and when they do, they're
You don't
still
know where
effective.
it's coming from.
Yeah.
Like, because, I mean, in 2019, no, excuse me, in 2018, Dean Pease sent a defensive back on 12% of his blitzing.
Wow.
Like 12%, which was the sixth most in the NFL
Man.
on defensive back blitzing. And in 2019, that percentage went up to
See,
14.2% of the time.
check
Now I
that out.
think that has a lot. I think that had a lot to do with Logan Ryan and
Right.
his ability. Like Dean Pease was able to trust him to do that.
Right.
But after watching some of the plays, like of Isaiah Oliver playing close to the line of scrimmage, I think that it is something that he could potentially excel at.
Yeah.
And if not him, you could still do these creepers, these simulated pressures type stuff with
Right.
a third linebacker. Like
Yeah.
you could go up there with, your four on the line. It almost, in that sense, look like a 4-3.
Yep.
You have, two or three down linemen, one edge guy standing up in a 2-point stance. Then you have, you know, like I said before, Foye, Michael Walker, and Deion Jones, or even like Foye and Deion in the middle, and then Michael Walker in that star role, that money role, because in his time in Fresno State, he played defensive end, linebacker,
Hmm.
safety.
Yep.
So that's a role that I think that he could potentially excel at.
And let's talk about them standing up for a minute, because as you're hearing early reports, they're already impressed with Marlon Davidson.
Yep.
And we know that's what he did in college a lot, standing up, man. And you saw film of Tennessee lined up, standing up. I mean, it didn't matter if you was a tackle. It didn't matter if you was a rush in. It was times he had 4 guys standing up front.
That's it.
Uh,
And that's the thing is that I really believe that we have some guys who could potentially excel
yeah,
under the DMP system.
yeah,
I mean, this is the same guy, the same system that got, Paul Kruger paid by the Browns.
mm-hmm,
And, he goes to that system and doesn't really do much. Same thing with Courtney Upshaw.
yep,
Like, he didn't necessarily get paid by the Falcons, but when, under his tutelage, Courtney Upshaw was an outside linebacker, which is crazy to think that big of a guy was an outside linebacker. But
right,
it speaks to how Dean Pease, is willing to adapt his scheme to the players that he has.
right,
And the similarities of Tennessee's, what I consider to be an average defense, like average talent, to what we have. I mean, Dean Pease is already like comparing Grady Jarrett to Jarrell Casey.
right,
And, in 2018, Jarrell Casey led the team in sacks with 7 sacks and 11 quarterback hits. So it wasn't just sacks. He was constantly getting pressure. He followed it up with 5 sacks in 2019 with 10 QB hits. So if Dean Pease is seeing a similarity in play styles between Jarrell Casey and Grady Jarrett, that already tells me that he has an idea of how he's going to use Grady Jarrett.
Oh yeah, yeah, most definitely. I mean, he has so much flexibility. I mean, he got more flexibility using these types of schemes than what most Falcons fans would think, with guys like John Kaminsky,
Yep.
Marlon Davis, and them, and that's what makes it exciting for me. And I still have my eyes on JTM.
Yes.
Jacob
Yep.
Aaron.
Yeah, JTM I think is a candidate to really bust out. Like you
Yeah.
were starting to see it a little bit last year under Raheem Morris and Jeff Ulbrich, but I think that Dean Pease is going to get some much due like untapped potential out of him.
Yeah.
He's been putting in a lot of work. You've seen the workout videos, and I think they've even, like, the coaches have even mentioned him by name already, which is a good sign this early in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So JTM is a guy who I expect to be a solid contributor on this defense and on this team. But yeah, this, like, when you brought this creepers and simulated pressure, it almost like it made everything just click.
Yeah.
It made everything that I was looking at, and then I went back and watched some other games, and I was like, holy crap, that's exactly what I was.
Yep.
Look, I didn't know a term for it. I didn't know necessarily what it was called. But yeah, I mean, like, especially in 2019, Dean Pease lived with this creepers and with this simulated pressures.
Yep.
And,
Number 1 in the NFL, man, and that says a lot right there.
right. And I mean, with his close relationship with guys like Saban and Belichick and all them, it doesn't surprise me that he's adaptable the way he is, because there's a podcast that I've talked about more than once with a guy by the name of Coach Vass. I think the name of the podcast is like "Make Defenses Great Again" or something of that nature.
Yep.
Like, if you have a chance, you should go look it up. He did a whole episode where he interviewed Dean Pease, and that was an extremely insightful episode, talking about, like, we're going to put, if you have a man cover corner, a guy who excels at man, why would you ask him to play in zone?
Right.
And, vice versa. And talking about, like, their Super Bowl run with the Ravens, how he was without Ray Lewis and Terrell Suggs for the vast majority of the season, and then got him back right at the playoff run and had to readjust everything again.
Yep.
So that gets me excited after dealing with almost a decade now of coaches who are seem to be more stubborn
Yeah.
than they should be. I'm really excited to have a defensive staff who is willing to work with what they have and mold their scheme to what they have.
And it's funny. What they usually say about older guys, they're stuck in their old ways. But Dean Pease, doesn't matter the age for him, he's adaptable. If he sees something that he can incorporate in what he already does well, and he definitely does it. And this is one of those examples. But the other thing is that's beautiful about this is, see, when you're throwing out different looks like that, you're causing the offense, the coordinators, and everybody have to take a little bit longer trying to detect what your true core identity is and what you do well. They won't be able to do it so easily, which will allow you to have success throughout the season. And when you got the quarterbacks we're about to play, JR, I mean, you got to believe that Dean Pease is salivating right now with these guys. A lot of these guys, besides Tom Brady, is still wet behind the ears, as
Yep.
they like to say about young folks. And so
Yeah,
he's excited.
and looking at this kind of this stuff with these creepers and this simulated pressure, which hasn't necessarily taken the league by storm yet, might
Right.
lend some light onto why Dean Pease made the comment that he was ahead of Tom Brady.
Right.
The on the radio, that little sound bite he had there, which got me pumped and got me going like, okay, all right then, coach. You
Yes,
know,
sir.
but no, like I said, I'm very excited about what Dean Pease brings to the table, and it's starting to shed a little bit of light on
Yeah.
what I think we can expect. I'm gonna throw these diagrams up one more time so the folks at home can get an idea of what we were talking about with these
Right.
creepers. This is like these two plays are just an example. Like this is going against a 2x2 set, which you don't see a ton of in the NFL. It tends to be more 3x1 or 2x1 or
Yeah.
what have you. But still in this set, you have your free safety dropping down, your strong safety covering the middle of the field, which speaks again to Deron Harmon and Richie Grant being
Yep.
almost interchangeable,
Yeah.
which makes
Yep.
more sense to why they let Ricardo Allen and Keanu Neal walk,
Yep.
because this scheme
Yep.
is going to need more of an interchangeable safeties. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, but yeah, that's just like I said, for the folks at home to get a one more real good look at what we're talking about here. What creeper essentially is a safe blitz.
Yep.
Normally, when you blitz, you're sending more than they can block. Well, this concept is not necessarily sending more than they can block. It's just sending somebody from a different area that they're
Mm-hmm.
not used to them coming from,
Yeah.
while still dropping a lineman at least to cover. Like, I don't think you're expecting Marlon Davidson to run step with a running back coming out of the
Right.
backfield.
Right.
But if you're dropping him into coverage, he at least is going to try to get in the way.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. See, these creepers and simulated pressures. The other thing you like about them too is they actually invite you to try to go for your hot read.
Yep.
Because if you go for the hot read against these creepers and simulated pressures, guess what that do? Give them a chance to make a play on the ball because they know where your hot read is. And if you can't get the hot read, guess what it is? It produces a sack.
That's it. And that's the thing. That's the part that that has me like really kind of jumping a little bit, because let's see, in 2019 they had 43 sacks and they had um, 84 QB hits.
Golly, boy.
Right. And
I ain't seen that
so
in a long time.
right, and that's something that, like, by comparison, I don't think we had nearly as. Let me pull this up real quick. Let's see if I can get it pulled up without stalling too much here.
Hey man, don't do it to it, JL. You're going to embarrass us like that,
Well,
man.
I mean, look, we got to give it as perspective, okay? You gotta give the folks perspective, because if you don't, all you're really doing is just throwing numbers out there. Oh, that sounds cute, that sounds good. Let's see here. Okay, so what did I say in 2019? They had 84.
Yeah, 84 QB hit.
Okay, in 2019 we had 69 QB
Mm,
hits, and we
wow.
had 28 sacks to their 43 sacks. And in 2019 we had Vic Beasley and Tack McKinley, 2 first-round picks, and
Yeah,
that's the deal with having athletes over a plan.
right,
You see what I'm saying? Like
right.
like I always get on Dirk Cutter about being a coach that's like, I'm gonna line up my guy and just let him beat your guy. Well, it's really
Hmm.
seemed like Dan Quinn had that same philosophy. On the defensive side of the ball, because you go to the end of 29 or 2020 this past season. Now, granted, this past season we didn't have Tack, we didn't have Vic at that point, or Tack for the most of the season. Yeah, we
Right.
didn't have Vic. So let's see here. See if I can get it pulled up. Okay, QB hits were, now we had some, but you got to remember, Ulbrich dialed up a lot of blitzes
Yeah.
when he took over, especially from Dion and Foye. But we had 92 QB
Mm.
hits. Didn't it seem like we had 92? Didn't seem like it to
No, it
me.
didn't.
But
But
here's
that's
the
good
problem.
though.
Here's the problem. 29 sacks. And you
Right.
say, well, JR, you just told me sacks weren't a big deal. Okay, if you got 92 QB hits and 29 sacks, that tells me that your secondary was crap and they was able to get the ball
Yep.
off. So
Sure will. See.
a lot of
See.
those hits should have been sacks.
Hmm.
So this coaching staff has done a good job of, at least I feel like, of remaking the secondary, and I think that's going to help out a lot too.
Yeah. And it's gonna be a big secondary too, man. That's what I'm excited about, man. I mean, you have a potential of having a big secondary back there.
Oh yeah,
Uh, I know Jimbo got to be excited
oh
about
yeah.
that.
I was really hoping we was going to be able to get Jimbo on here,
Yeah,
but
man.
it didn't
Yeah.
work out tonight. But that's all right. Well, man, that's what I got. That unloaded what I was thinking. Was there anything else that you think we missed that you were wanting to get out there?
Oh no, man. I mean, I'm just excited to see what Dean Pease does with the guys, and I just think this defense is going to be surprisingly better than what most fans think. And this to me gives a big time picture of how all of this stuff comes together for Dean Pease and what he can do with the personnel that he has currently right now. And they may add some more. I don't think they're done, but
No, I don't think
we
so
shall
either.
see.
One of Dean Pease's guys just got released by the Chiefs. That Kamalea Correa.
Mm,
He was a backup rusher on the Titans, so that might be somebody they look to bring in. So yeah, I mean, I think that this defense has a real chance to make some good leaps this year,
yeah.
and especially with the current coaching staff that we have. But anyway, y'all can, as always, y'all can find us on Twitter. I'm at Grim1128. Toby,
I'm Toby D 1991.
you can catch us on Patreon for behind the scenes and access to a private pound for pound chat if you like. That is Patreon /pound P for P ATL. If y'all want to go and subscribe there and get access to some fun stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much about it. And Toby, anything else?
Oh man, that's it, man.
All right. Well, as always, Falcons fans, rise up.
That's up.